Now that you've gotten a sheet uploaded for you, or you've identified an area where a sheet already exists, but no townlands have been mapped, the next thing to do is to actually check that sheet and rectify it. But before we can rectify it, when we rectify sheets, you mark points on the sheet against OpenStreetMap data and match these points up on the sheet with the existing OpenStreetMap. That way your sheet will be overlaid correctly to the correct point, basically in Earth. Due to the curve of the Earth, these sheets are flat, so essentially they have to be stretched and warped to correctly fit over the imagery. So before you can do that, you have to make sure that the existing OpenStreetMap data is correct before you go rectifying. So in this episode, I'm going to go through a couple of things you need to do before you actually get to rectification. So one of the things to watch out for is existing OpenStreetMap data that isn't correctly aligned to the satellite imagery. So for example, here up in an area in Roscommon, we have an old railway line running along here, and you can see on the imagery, if I turn off the OpenStreetMap data, there's where the old line ran, and here is the OpenStreetMap data showing that line. However, if I move slightly further down, you'll see here the two are not aligned correctly, and it gets worse the further on you go. So I'm going to show you how to correctly align that, and also another thing that you need to watch out for is, especially on newer main roads, a lot of the times these will have been upgraded or alignments changed, through roadworks and so on. So for example, here you'll see there's a much sharper bend here, and if I just switch to the map sheet, you can actually see this sharper turn here, but the new road doesn't have that sharper turn because obviously through roadworks and development or whatever, that sharper turn has been taken out of the road. So you can't rectify against this old part of the road because it's no longer in use. Now you could still add this as a track or a service road into this area here and rectify against that, but just to make sure that you're not rectifying this against this road here. So that's one of the things to look out for. Also, the same applies also with streams as well. And ditches. A lot of the times, these will the flow will have been adjusted either through engineering works or farmers moving walls and so on. So you have to be careful with those as well and make sure you're lining up against the correct feature and that it hasn't been adjusted. So, going back to correcting OpenStreetMap data. So this one here you can see is not lined up to the old railway. So what we're going to use to align that is what's called the Improve Way Accuracy mode. Right? And the shortcut key in JOSM is W. I'm going to turn off the imagery for a second just to show you how this works. So if I click on this old railway here and I hit W, what you'll see is these two kind of dashed lines. Now what these dashed lines do, if I don't press any other key, in between those, each end of that dashed line is connected to a node either end of this node. So if I just click anywhere now, it just moves that node that's in between the other two. If I hold down the control key, it will add another node. So I can add other nodes to realign. If I hold down the Alt key, it will delete nodes. So you'll see the highlighted node there will be deleted. I'll just delete those. Actually, I'll revert it back to its original. Too many of these. Okay, so there it is back to its original. So now, just to show you how to actually align it against the current imagery. So this first one, I'm just going to click once. I'm not holding Control or Alt. So that's align that. And now I'm just going to hold down Control to add a new node here. And just bring it along and aligning this to the middle of the feature. And so on. So that's basically what you need to do, because you're going to be, if I turn on the old map sheet here, you're going to be lining up this old map sheet, the railway on this old map sheet, to this railway in OpenStreetMap. So this railway in OpenStreetMap has to align to the physical feature. You can't just simply align this to the existing data without checking that data first to make sure that it's correct. Now unfortunately, if I zoom out here, just turn off the data and turn on the old map sheet, you can see a map sheet covers quite a large area. So before you can actually rectify this sheet against OpenStreetMap data, you need to check all the data in this area. So if I turn on OpenStreetMap as a background layer and then just dim it, you'll see what kind of an area you're looking at. The easiest way I've found for doing this is breaking down the OpenStreetMap area into various sections. So using the existing mapped features as a way of breaking it down. So for example, if I took, say, from this point here on the N60 to this point here and just checked everything in this area on one evening and realigned anything that needs to be realigned, then say the next evening do everything in this section here using the R, I think that's R361 and the N60 there, and this county boundary basically as my limits of my alignment check. Do everything inside this area, and then on another evening do everything inside this area, another evening do in here, and so on. That way you break it up, because this can be a very tedious task, but unfortunately it needs to be done for a couple of reasons. One, obviously for aligning the map sheets to make sure they're correct, but also two, because a lot of the older data in OpenStreetMap was done with GPS traces, which were great to have at the time, but now we have imagery donated from Bing or Microsoft, which is correctly aligned. So we know that everything we're aligning to this imagery is correct, which means a lot of the older OpenStreetMap data needs to be adjusted. Sometimes it can be off by 1 meter, 2 meters, or in most cases 5, 10, 15 meters. As you saw with some of that railway line, a lot of it was off by maybe 10, 15 meters in a lot of cases. So just to run through again, I'm going to remove this OpenStreetMap layer, and I'm also just going to run through a couple of quick keyboard shortcuts for you as well. So to switch between the various layers, if you hold down Alt, and JOSM does this a bit strangely, it counts from the bottom up. So this is layer 1, layer 2, and layer 3. So if I press Alt 1, it turns the B imagery off and on. Alt 2 will turn the map sheet imagery off and on. And Alt 3 will turn the data layer off and on. So just going back and aligning this again. That was my original point here. So I've done as far as here. So again, I'm going to press W to turn on my improve way accuracy. Then I'm going to hold Control just to add a node here. I'm not going to hold any key here because I have a node here that I can bring down. And then just keep progressing along Wherever it starts to veer away, go back to the last point where it was correct and just add a node there, and then just move along, and where it's misaligned, bring it back in line again. You always want the OpenStreetMap data following the center line, so whether it's a road, a stream, a railway, you want the data to follow the center line of that feature. So just zooming into the road here, you can see the data runs straight down the middle of the road. That's the way you always want your data. As well, when you're reviewing for alignment, what you'll find a lot of the time, or depending on how active members are in your area, is you might find a lot of missing roads. So by all means, go ahead and add those roads as well. For example, over here in this forest area here, I can see a roadway going through here, but it's simply a forest track for obviously the forestry department or wheelchair, whatever they're called. So I would simply be adding a service road or a track going in through this area here. And tagging that then. Highway service. And I'll continue that on in a minute. So just before I finish up, I want to just talk to you about this website. It's a company called ITO World or ETO World, and they're a company that makes a huge amount of use out of OpenStreetMap and OpenStreetMap data. They also give an awful lot of tools back to the community as well. They have, if you go in here into ITO2 or ETO tools, you've OSM mapper analysis and so on. One that's very good, especially in terms of where you have to realign roads and rivers and streams and railways. One of the things that can happen is, as you spend some time doing all of this realignment, you can lose your place in the map as to where you've aligned stuff and where you haven't. So one very good feature, or one very good tool that they provide, is what's called a heat map. And this is it here. I'll just zoom out a small bit. Apologies again, my connection is very slow. So basically what this is here is all the recent edits within the last 90 days on OpenStreetMap. So the newer the edit, the brighter the color. So these are older edits here, and these are fresher edits, and these are older than those. And again, so the railway that I edited there earlier in this episode, if this loads here, you can see is colored in an orange here. So it shows you that this has been recently edited. So as you're working your way around a sheet, and as I mentioned before, in terms of breaking the sheet up into various sections, you can refer back to this to see how far you've gotten along. Now this layer doesn't update instantly. It's every, I think, 24, maybe 48 hours it updates. So essentially, if you're working on this every evening or every second evening, or however often you're working on this, you can refer back to this website, and it'll essentially show you where or how far you've gotten in terms of realigning things. So you can see areas down here where I've mapped townlands, so all that data is fresh data. So you can see there's nothing up here, which is the area where we're currently working on with our Castlereagh sheet. So it's a very handy tool for keeping track and very useful, so I recommend it. And the link to this will be on the wiki page, which is linked down below in the description. For more information on mapping townlands in Ireland, go to the OpenStreetMap wiki and search for mapping townlands. And on the search page you will see a link to the main section and also to the Townlands video series. On the Townlands video series section, you will find a summary for each episode, links to each individual episode, and also a list of links for any software or websites mentioned in each episode.